Happy New Year, happy 2022, and welcome back to the channel. Marco Collective Gamer 77 here, and I wanted to go over this quick King of Fighters 1999 overview, and also thank everyone that liked, subscribed, commented, and helped grow this small little channel in 2021, and I hope to continue to move forward in 2022. Hope everyone has a great New Year's Eve, and looking forward to a good 2022. And King of Fighters 1999 kicks off the Nest storyline, where an evil organization is trying to clone fighters for their own nefarious purposes. This series introduces K, Maxima, Whip, also the Kyo clones, Kyo 1, who plays like Kyo from King of Fighters 1994 and 1995, and Kyo 2, who plays like King of Fighters 96 and 97. Yuri, and the real actual Kyo is also in this set, in this game, but with new movesets. Initially, when they were released, they were hidden characters, but then eventually they were just on as part of the roster. He also introduced Bao, Junhoon, Zhang Fei, who comes from Real Bao. So while the roster is a little smaller, I think it's still, it's a good start to the NES saga. And as you can probably tell just from the video running through, that the game itself has a different theme. A lot of the stages and the areas that you fight in are a lot darker, a bit grittier than the 97 or the 90s games, which basically started off at 94, 95, and then from 96, which kicked off the Orochi saga, and of course the 98 Dream Match. And in King of Fighters 99, they still include the kind of two move sets that was introduced in King of Fighters 98. So you now have the counter mode and the extra mode. The counter mode basically strengthens offense. It basically allows you to execute a lot of super moves indefinitely. A lot of the time, like if you were kind of, it harkens back to the older series where if you're in the red, you could perform all your ultra desperation moves ad nauseum. There's also an armor mode, which enhances defense, but disables any of the special super moves. The extra mode from the previous game is basically gone. They've removed that. They did keep the tactical role, which changed a little bit. So instead of just dodging, characters can leap back and then forward again. Uh, all the players, as introduced, you can see in the kind of screenshots, they reintroduced the battle points, which is one of the only ways to fight and face the last boss. The final boss is Chrysalid, who takes two different forms. And the first form just kind of lulls you into a false sense of security, and his final form basically just kicks your butt, SNK boss style. POW gauges still act pretty much like the old series. Be you as you perform moves, special moves, getting hit by attacks, it builds up your POW gauge at a small rate. Of course, once you fill up the gauge, you do get a stock of power. From there, for the cost of one stock or one of the little glowing dots, you can do guard counters, guard cancels, and they basically, once you're fully stored up to 3 stocks and you reach maximum power, you can also gather strength with the full gauge by activating one of 2 power-ups. The power-up modes will be active for a short time, and then as they slowly kind of drains, will then deactivate. In addition to also taking a look at your life gauge, when your character is basically flashing red, and if you have at least 1 stock of power stored, all desperation art moves are upgraded to the max desperation art moves, which at times, depending on the move, could inflict almost 1.5 to 2 times damage of a normal desperation attack move, which really can save your bacon, especially when you're fighting computers or you've got a pretty tense combat going on with a friend or frenemy. And then with the counter mode that I mentioned earlier, when your stock gauge is fully stocked with all 3 flashing kind of circular icons, if you press A, B, and C, you activate a counter mode. You have about 15 seconds, I think 15 to 18 seconds, I believe, while your counter mode becomes active before it fully drains out. Any damage from command and special moves increases slightly, It can also, of course, execute desperation attack moves indefinitely during this time. You can also perform guard cancels and guard escapes indefinitely during that 15 to 18-second time. And any of the moves, if you go to the command list, if you have the AES, can actually be cancelable into your Desperation Art move. If your life is flashing red, the max Desperation Art move is not available at all if you're in counter mode. And now we come to the armor mode. Again, fully powered up, still costs 3 stocks, same as counter mode. And while you're doing that, you've got an even shorter amount of time, I believe right around 10 to 12 seconds, for armor mode to stay active before it fully drains. Now, while in armor mode, if you are attacked and hit, you take a little bit less damage, so it's a bit of a ratio there. When you are struck by an opponent in the middle of an attack, your attack still resumes as normal, which again helps with the armor mode and interrupting your whatever combo you're trying to dish out. Any type of desperation attack moves are pretty much unavailable at this time. Guard cancels, guard escapes, completely unavailable for the 10 to 12 seconds while the armor mode is active. And as previously mentioned, this game introduces the striker system. Every team is now you can select from, again, like I mentioned earlier, from 4 characters. 3 characters that you actually fight and control, and 1 striker. The fourth, again, as I mentioned, is always a striker. The striker always needs at least 1 striker bomb in order to be called out into the fight and help you out. You call them out by pressing the BC. There's a little bit of cooldown, of course, and you can only summon a striker when you're actually standing still and not in the middle of a move. Sometimes you can it feels like you can almost cash it during frenetic fights, and that could just be some of the programming error, but pretty much while you're still, the striker can be called. The striker basically shows up, does a quick support. Some of the striker moves does have a bit of delay, and they can almost be knocked out of it, at least with boss characters. I haven't seen it as much with normal everyday team fighters. Every striker does something a little bit different. Most of the striker awards are about 3, but of course, as you lose characters, you will gain a striker bomb, and it goes up to as high as 5. This bomb is again awarded when you lose a character, or basically when you lose a round. And as I mentioned, the roster this year is a little smaller, at least, which is again to be expected since it is coming from 1998, which was a dream match and basically was non-canonical, had no storyline attached to it, so you could have dead characters like Geese and other characters come back and play in the roster. Now, they did make some changes to the team. The Japan team lost Goro and brings in Benimaru, Shingo, Kei, and Maxima together. Mai Shiranui joins the Fatal Fury team. Takuma returns into the Art of Fighting team. King becomes the new leader of the women fighting team, and Kasumi returns the women's team as well. Kyo Kusanagi and Yori does come back. So with that said, the new official team roster starts off with the hero team, or the protagonist team, which is Kei, Maxima, Benimaru Nikaido, Shingo Yabuki. Fatal Fury team stays mostly the same, with the addition of Mai Shiranui, joining Terry and Andy Bogard and Joe Higashi. Ryo Sakazaki, Robert Garcia, Yuri Sakazaki, and Takuma Sakazaki is now the Art of Fighting team. Ikar Warriors team is joined by Whip, who has Leona, Ralph Jones, and Clark Still. The Psycho Soldier team is Athena Asimiya, Sei Konsu, Chin Gensai, and Bao. The women's fighting team, as I mentioned, now has King as the leader. Blue Mary joins them. Kusumi Toto comes back, and Lee Zhangfei from the Real About Fatal Fury Series 2. The Korea Justice team still has Kim Kapwan, Chang Kohen, Choi Bunji, and also new character Jun Hoon. The boss character is Chrysalid, who's in his version 1 and 2, with some sub-boss characters like Kyo 1 or Kyo 2. Some of the originally not playable in the arcade or MVS versions of King Fighters 99 were Kyo Kusanagi and Yori Yagami, which, if you're playing at home, fortunately they are selectable. There are some extra kind of little Easter eggs as well if you choose specific teams. So if you choose the King of Fighters Generation team, and again, I do apologize. So these are going to be only for the PlayStation ports, maybe even the Neo Geo CD, but I don't have the Neo Geo CD version. But I remember playing this on the PlayStation. For the King of Fighters Generation team, it had to be Kyo, Yori Igami, Kyo Kusanagi, and Shingo Yabuki. And Whip, it was her and the quote unquote servants team, which is Whip, Benimaru Nikaido, Kyo Kusanagi, and Yori Yagami. The inhumanly strong team is Maxima, Ralph Jones, Bao, and Chang Kohen. The good looking team is Andy, Bogard, Benimaru Nikaido, Jun Hoon, and Chang Kohen. The little kids team is Bao, Ling Zhangfei, Shingo Yabuki, Mansei Kanse. The Masters team is Takuma Sakazaki, Chin Gensai, Kim Kapwan, Jun Hoon. The Hat team is Terry Bogard, Clark Still, Choi Bonji, and Bao. The short haired team is Blue Mary, Whip, King, and Athena Asamiya. The midriff team is Benimaru Nikaido, Leona Hydern, Athena Asamiya, and Blue Mary. Shingo Servitude team is Kyo Kusanagi, Kyo 1, Kyo 2, and Shingo Yabuki. Now, for the Fatal Fury team, it would have to compose of any of these following characters: Terry, Andy, Joe, Mai, Kim, Blue Mary, or Zhang Fei. Again, there's also the Olive Art fighting team, which consists of, from any of these characters, Ryo, Robart, Yuri, Takuma, King, and Kasumi. For these stages here, you've got the normal stages like the airport stage 1 and 2, the alley stage, museum stage, park stage 1 and 2, and the park stage 3. Of course, this was also released on the Dreamcast, which also had the same stages but with 3D backgrounds, which was then selectable in the PlayStation 2 Japanese versions, where you can go from the original 2D sprites or the 3D backgrounds that were presented in the Dreamcast. And also for the Dreamcast King of Fighters 99 version, they did also include the amusement park and the Cuckoo Clock Tower. And for the home versions for King of Fighters 99, Kyo and Yuri are selectable, but you do need to beat them in arcade mode. In the arcade mode, if you're facing Chrysalid and you've got a minimum of at least 200 points, you'll face Yuri after defeating Chrysalid. If you're at least minimum of 280 points, you'll face Kyo. After beating them in arcade mode, you basically will go to the roulette, hold down start, and we'll do basically different controller motions in order to select Kyo or Yuri if you beat them in the arcade mode after facing Chrysalid. To select Kyo after beating, again in arcade mode, it is press and hold start, left right up, left down right. For Yuri, it is going to be holding start, right left up, right down left. And of course, over the years, there's been many ports of this game. Upon release in '99, of course, besides the MVS and AES system, it was also released to the PlayStation and Dreamcast. The Dreamcast being the better version in a lot of respects, mainly because of the reduced load times, thanks to video RAM or enough memory to load the characters and a faster CD-ROM drive, whereas the PlayStation or even had longer load times and also cut frames of animation. The Dreamcast was probably helped in the load time as some of the background stages were done in 3D. It was also released then to PlayStation 2, which included basically the 99, 2000, and 2001, which became the NES compilation, which you can also select from 2D or 3D backgrounds. It even had the extra strikers and some gallery illustrations as well in regards to the PlayStation 2 version. You can also pick it up now, of course, on the PlayStation Network, on Xbox, Switch, and even the PC as well. Overall summary: graphics, which includes sprites, backgrounds, animation, solid 8 out of 10. Still enjoyed the game. I still think graphically it's quite a stunner. And again, I'll speak to this ad nauseum, considering that this is on the same exact hardware and board that they introduced in the late 80s. Amazing. Quite amazing. Music, sound, and voices. I would say a good solid 8 out of 10, even a 7.5 or 8 out of 10. Not quite the banger that King of Fighters 96 was when it came to the soundtrack, but still very good. There's at least 4 tracks that I really like, and I included them on this video playing in the background. Now, as far as control, replayability, it's a fighting game. So fortunately, the characters themselves are unique. So there's definitely a lot of characters where you can find your favorites, especially since you can pick and select different characters. Now, it's a solid 8 out of 10, not a 9 for me, only because they messed with characters that I really have built muscle memory on, which is Andy Bogard and Robert Garcia specifically. Changing from quarter circle motions to a charge character really kind of threw me off in regards to using and utilizing those characters in the game. Now, as far as where this starts off in the NES series, and overall, again, a very solid 8 out of 10 overall for me. This was a good start to the NES saga. Unfortunately, I don't think the NES saga ended well or ended on a high note, but I think primarily that was due to the kind of the situation that SNK Playmore faced, that found itself in kind of later on, where they have to file for bankruptcy, going from SNK and then becoming SNK Playmore, and kind of reducing. I believe it felt like their budgets for a lot of their fighting games. So for me, as far as 99, solid 8 out of 10. I will speak to 2000 and 2001 more on the next overviews. And as I previously mentioned, easily able to find any of these games digitally. A little bit tougher to find it physically. If you're going to try to buy the American version or US version, you're going to pay a pretty penny. However, Japanese versions, Japanese AES, still my go-to even to today with the raised retro prices. You can still pick this up a lot cheaper than you could the US versions, and a lot of times the versions themselves are pretty much in great or excellent condition, easily a 7 to a 9 out of 10. A lot of times, at least for the version that I had, was actually still fairly, I would say almost mint, where literally the manual was treated, I think, almost with kid gloves. So in that respect, again, if you're going physical, definitely go with the Japanese AES. Now, if SNK is hearing this, please, please, please reintroduce Neo Geo AES games in a new console that pays homage to the Neo Geo AES of old, and now thanks to the higher memory capacity, you don't have to have the Neo Geo AES in the huge plastic boxes. Even have them in either Genesis or Super Famicom, Super Nintendo sized cartridges, but still have the shock boxes, but all reduced, but with full size home arcade sticks, clicky buttons, everything. Please reintroduce that. Even if it's maybe a limited amount, you're only releasing maybe 10 to 30,000. I would love, and I think a lot of Neo Geo collectors out there would love to have that as well. So hopefully, SNK, if you're listening, please do something like that. I think maybe in that channel I'll do some kind of drawing mock-ups of what I mean, and I hope that does happen in the future. But for now, I want to thank everyone for viewing, watching this video. Please like and subscribe on our road to King of Fighters 15 in 2022.